Have you ever felt it? That subtle shift in the air when something isn't right. When your home, the one place meant to protect you, starts feeling unfamiliar, not broken into, not vandalized, not attacked, just watched. Tonight on Fear Spiral, I'm going to tell you something that might change the way you see your neighbors forever. Because sometimes danger doesn't kick down your door. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. Sometimes it stands quietly on the other side of a wall, listening. It begins with something small. An umbrella leaning in the wrong place. A porch light mysteriously unscrewed. Footsteps in a hallway when no one should be there. A curtain that twitches the moment you look at it. You tell yourself it's nothing. Old houses make noise. Neighbors notice things. You're just being paranoid. But what if you're not? What if someone has already memorized your schedule? What if they know when you leave for work, when you come home, when you turn off the lights? What if they've been watching long before you ever noticed them? Tonight, you'll hear multiple real-life encounters that share one terrifying pattern. The friendly neighbor, the quiet observer, the polite smile hiding something darker. Men who blended in, men who never technically broke the law, men who stood just close enough to make your skin crawl, but never close enough for anyone else to believe you. And that's the worst part. When you tell someone, the landlord, the police, your friends, and they say, he's harmless. Probably just coincidence. You're overthinking it. Until one night, you look out the window, and he's there. Still, silent, smiling. This isn't about haunted houses. This is about psychological intrusion. The slow erosion of safety. The kind of fear that builds quietly until you can't sleep, can't breathe, can't trust the shadows in your own home. By the end of this video, you might start noticing the small signs in your own life. And that's exactly why you need to watch carefully, because the scariest neighbors aren't the loud ones. They're the ones who watch. If you love deep psychological horror, real-life suspense, and stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, make sure you subscribe to Fear Spiral, hit that like button, and comment below. I trust my instincts. Because once you enter the spiral, you start seeing things differently. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story 1. The Walls Have Ears. When Ryan and Claire moved into the duplex on Hawthorne Street, they weren't looking for perfection. They were looking for peace. It was 2017. They were young, exhausted, stretched thin by long shifts and student loans. The little duplex in Cedar Falls, Illinois wasn't glamorous. Cracked porch paint, aging siding, narrow hallway dividing 2 units, but it was affordable. And most importantly, it was theirs. Cedar Falls looked like the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. The type of Midwestern town where neighbors waved from their porches and lawns were trimmed with almost competitive precision. But there was something about the way people smiled there. Friendly, yet distant. Like everyone silently agreed not to ask too many questions. The landlord had mentioned the neighbor next door while handing over the keys. Howard Green, quiet guy, been here 15 years, no trouble. That meant he'd watched other tenants come and go. Ryan remembered their first meeting clearly. Howard stood outside trimming rose bushes, wearing a beige cardigan despite the mild weather. His hair was slicked back too neatly, his posture stiff, calculated. When Ryan introduced himself, Howard smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was observational, like he was cataloging details. Claire squeezed Ryan's arm afterward. "He doesn't blink much," she whispered. Ryan laughed it off. At first, the knocking began on the 5th night. 3 slow taps. From the shared hallway wall, Claire called Ryan at work, her voice thin with unease. "I heard footsteps, then 3 knocks. Exactly 3. Old houses settle," he told her. "Pipes expand. Wood shifts." But the knocking returned. Always between 11 p.m. and midnight. Always when Claire was alone. And always 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. Ryan tried striking up conversation one afternoon while Howard clipped roses. "Nice garden," Ryan said. Howard didn't look at him. "Roses don't talk back," he replied softly. Then he smiled, that same faint, knowing smile. Later that week, small things began shifting. Claire's umbrella moved from its hook. The porch light unscrewed halfway. Boot prints appeared near their door after rain, too close to be accidental. Each incident was small enough to doubt, but together they formed a pattern, and patterns don't lie. The night Ryan saw the photographs was the night everything changed. Rain blurred the streetlights into glowing halos. As he stepped from his car, he noticed movement behind Howard's curtain, a flicker of candlelight. Curiosity pulled him closer. Through the thin slit in the fabric, he saw a wall, covered with photographs, dozens of them. Claire studying near the window, Ryan carrying groceries, both of them laughing on the porch. Images taken from angles that weren't casual. They were deliberate, hidden, and then the curtain snapped shut. Ryan stood frozen in the rain, heart pounding so loudly he could hear it over the storm. He didn't tell Claire. Not yet. She had exams. She was already anxious about the knocking. So instead, he bought a small door camera and waited. 2 nights later, at 3:47 a.m., the camera captured something that erased all doubt. Howard shuffled up to their door in slippers. He leaned forward, pressed his ear against the wood, and stayed there, breathing, listening, for nearly a full minute, then calmly walked back to his side of the duplex, as if nothing had happened. The confrontation didn't go how Ryan expected. "What were you doing at our door?" he demanded the next morning. Howard blinked slowly, checking for drafts. "That's not your job." Howard tilted his head. "You should be more grateful, Ryan. I see things before you do." That sentence lingered, like a threat disguised as advice. Police were called. An officer came, spoke to Howard, shrugged. "He's eccentric, but he hasn't broken the law. He's stalking us." Without direct threats, their hands were tied. That was when the fear shifted. It wasn't just about Howard anymore. It was about being alone in the fear. Weeks passed. Claire began hearing whispers through the wall, sometimes her own name. The faint smell of candle wax drifted through the vents at night. Lights stayed on 24/7. Ryan kept a bat beside the bed. Then the envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, "You leave at 6:42. She leaves at 7:15. Don't change your routine." That was no longer eccentric. That was surveillance. Police still couldn't act. No direct threat. No crime. Just patterns. Just presence. Just waiting. The breaking point came during a November storm. Power flickered. Rain pounded. Claire stood frozen in the living room, holding a candle. Ryan, he turned toward the window, and there he was, Howard, standing inches from the glass, rain dripping down his face, smiling, not moving, not reacting, just watching. It wasn't until headlights swept across the yard that he finally stepped back into the shadows. By the time Ryan ran outside, he was gone. 2 weeks later, Howard moved out. No warning, no forwarding address. His unit was spotless, empty, except for one spare bedroom. Wallpaper faded in rectangular outlines, dozens of them, where photographs had once hung. All removed, all erased. Ryan and Claire moved the following spring. They married. They built a new life. But some habits never left. Ryan still checks porch lights twice, still scans blinds before leaving, and sometimes, in the early morning, he swears he feels pale blue eyes on him, watching. And here's the truth. Howard never resurfaced. No reports. No arrests. No closure. Maybe he moved on. Maybe he found another duplex. Another couple. Another routine to memorize. Because sometimes danger doesn't need to act. It just needs to observe. And that was only the first story. In the next part, we descend deeper. Another townhouse, another neighbor, another man who smiled too easily. And this time, the watching didn't stop at walls. Story 2, The Owns Who Smile. If you think Ryan and Claire were just unlucky, you're wrong. Because the pattern repeats. Different cities, different neighbors, same feeling. The shift, the watching, the smile that lingers a second too long. The townhouse on Cypress Grove Court. She was 25 when she signed the lease. Raleigh, North Carolina, a modest townhouse. Beige siding, small square yard, the kind of place built for quiet independence. After years of roommates and chaos, she craved silence, and she found it. At first, her neighbor, Mike Carver, seemed helpful, friendly, the type who offered tools and waved from the porch. But friendliness can be camouflage. He asked questions that seemed casual. What time do you leave for work? Live alone. How late are you usually out? One morning he smiled and said, You leave around 7:15 every day, right? Back by 6 most nights. He said it casually, like he deserved credit for noticing. That was the first crack in the illusion. The night she saw someone vault her backyard fence, she already knew who it was. No proof, just instinct. The next morning she asked if he'd seen anyone near her yard. He stared at her, flat. Why would you think it was me? She hadn't accused him. He defended himself anyway. That's when she understood. He wasn't just watching, he was tracking. Weeks later, her friend Samantha stayed over. Near midnight, scraping sounds came from the parking lot. 2 men stood by her car, one shining a flashlight inside. The taller one, Mike. She confronted him. He didn't argue, didn't explain, just slowly walked back inside. Police came. No damage, no crime. Nothing to do. The phrase repeated itself like a curse. He hasn't technically done anything. Then came the note, folded on her windshield. Call me. We need to talk. No signature. But she didn't need one. She looked up his phone number later. He was a middle school teacher. And suddenly the world felt heavier. Because men like that don't look dangerous. They look normal. She broke the lease, paid the penalty, packed in silence while he stood on his porch, watching, smirking. He never stopped her. He never said goodbye. And that was the most unsettling part, because she knew he would simply find someone else to observe. Maplewood Heights, the neighbor across the street. Liam was 14. His sister Sophie was 10. Maplewood Heights in Illinois felt like safety personified. White fences, evening bike rides, parents chatting under porch lights. Then Greg Turner moved in. At first he was just loud, complaining about water touching his flowers, staring too long, parking too close. But tension builds quietly before it erupts. Late-night silent phone calls, footsteps near the fence, a slow smile when confronted. One evening Sophie screamed. Greg stood across the street, staring directly into her bedroom window. He lifted a finger to his lips. Silence. That gesture changed everything. Cameras were installed. Police were contacted. Greg never crossed a line that could be prosecuted. He stayed just inside legality. A masterclass in intimidation without consequence. Then came the envelope. Fake legal documents. Threatening language. I watch. I wait. That's when fear became routine. It wasn't about violence. It was about erosion. Sleep disappeared. Routine vanished. The home became a stage. And Greg, an audience of one. They eventually moved, but Sophie still checks windows because once someone studies your life like that, you never forget the apartment across the hall, Luke, Burlington, Vermont. Graduate student, quiet life, predictable rhythm. Then Luke moved in, mid-20s, awkward smile, harmless, until she saw him in the tree, perched outside her bedroom window, motionless, watching. He disappeared before police arrived. Management dismissed it, probably pruning. But rocks appeared outside her door, leaves arranged deliberately. Notes: I see you. It escalated slowly, always stopping short of a crime. The genius of psychological control is restraint. He wanted her aware. He wanted her afraid. Eventually she left, changed apartments, changed routines. But not habits. She still checks corners. Because once someone claims space in your mind, they don't fully leave. Crestwood Heights, The Pollitt Observer, Portland, Maine. Snow, stillness, remote work, a golden retriever named Bailey. Then Eli moved next door. Quiet, reserved, eyes that scanned windows too carefully. The door found slightly ajar one night. He blamed the wind. Strange smells, footsteps outside at 1 a.m. Then, one night in the alley, under a flickering streetlight, he raised a finger to his lips, just like Greg had. Silence. That gesture again. The universal language of control. Police reports, security upgrades, months of vigilance, until finally. But fear followed, because these men weren't impulsive. They were patient. And then, the house at 128 Willow Lane. A family, a normal life in Columbus, Ohio. Then the knocking began. Front door, back door, bedroom window. A hooded figure in the yard. Never speaking, never rushing. Just present, just watching. The Night Stalker never needed to enter. He needed them to know he could. And that knowledge became a cage. They moved. Of course they did. But the damage wasn't physical. It was psychological. And that's what makes this spiral so dangerous. The pattern. Different cities. Different names. Howard. Mike. Greg. Luke. Eli. The Night Stalker. But the method. Identical. 1. Blend in. 2. Observe quietly. 3. Learn routines. 4. Apply subtle pressure. 5. Stay just inside legality. 6. Let fear do the rest. Because once fear takes root, they don't have to act again. You do it for them. You check the locks. You lose sleep. You move away. And they remain untouched. Here's the hardest truth. Most predators don't look like monsters. They look like neighbors. They smile. They wave. They offer help. And while you're thanking them, they're memorizing you. And maybe, right now, there's someone in your neighborhood who knows your routine better than you do. The question is, have you noticed the signs yet? The shadow that lingers. What makes these stories terrifying isn't what happened. It's what didn't. No dramatic break-ins. No cinematic chases. No headline-making crimes. Just presence, observation, and the slow erosion of safety. Howard never faced consequences. Mike kept his job. Greg stayed within legal boundaries. Luke vanished before officers arrived. Eli hid behind politeness. The Night Stalker never crossed the final line. And that's what makes it real. Because danger doesn't always arrive with chaos. Sometimes it arrives with a smile. Sometimes it waters roses. Sometimes it teaches children. Sometimes it waves from the balcony. The most unsettling truth is this. They didn't need to break in. They only needed their victims to know they were being watched. Fear did the rest. Sleep disappeared. Habits changed. Homes were abandoned. Lives were quietly rearranged around someone else's obsession. That's power. Not loud, not violent, but deeply invasive. Psychological intrusion leaves no visible scars. No police report captures the full weight of it. No courtroom measures the cost of feeling unsafe in your own bedroom. But the body remembers. The way you double-check locks. The way you scan parking lots. The way your heart jumps when blinds move unexpectedly. That doesn't vanish. It lingers. The moral isn't paranoia. It's awareness. Trust the subtle signs. The umbrella moved. The porch light loosened. the routine memorized, the stare that lasts 1 second too long. You are not overthinking. Your instincts evolved for a reason. Politeness should never override safety. If something feels wrong, act early. Document everything. Strengthen boundaries. Tell someone you trust. Because the earlier you respond, the less control fear gains. And remember this, most watchers rely on silence. They rely on you doubting yourself. They rely on others dismissing your concerns. Break that pattern. Speak. Protect. Prepare. Because safety is fragile, but awareness is powerful. If this story made you look at your own surroundings differently, that means it worked. If you've ever experienced something similar, you are not alone. This channel exists to shed light on the shadows people don't talk about enough. If you believe instincts matter, if you believe awareness saves lives, if you understand that fear isn't weakness, it's information, then make sure you're subscribed to Fear Spiral. Like this video to help it reach others, and comment below, I stay aware. Your voice matters here. Because once you enter the spiral, you start noticing the details. And sometimes, noticing is what keeps you safe. Until next time, lock your doors, trust your instincts, and remember, not every shadow wants to scare you. Some just want to watch.